Thank you for joining us today at Homestead for Life. Today we are canning onions. So we've done already, you guys may have seen the video for caramelized onions. This time we're just doing regular onions. So we've got about, well, it was 3 pounds before we chopped the ends off, peeled them, sliced them, whatever. So they lost a little bit of weight in the ends and the peels. So roughly 3 pounds of onions. We've got all of our supplies. So we've got our canning jars. We've got our electric Carey Canner. Love this thing. We've got our spatula, stabby stick, whatever. We've got our lid grabber, magnetic lid grabber, jar grabber, jar lifter, canning funnel with the measurements on the side so you can measure the headspace, a cooling rack, our rings, distilled white vinegar, and then back here on our stove, already warming, we have our lids. So we've got all of our supplies and a pot of water because we've got to boil our onions. So before we start doing that, we are going to heat up our jars and the canner. So we are going to leave this on exhaust and we're just going to put it on slow cook for 30 minutes. So that'll heat up the jars, heat up the water and everything. So we'll be good to go there. And then we are going to start some water boiling on the stove so we can boil our onions. And that's it for now. So once the water's boiling, we're going to boil the onions for 5 minutes and then we're going to can them. Our water's boiling, so we are going to add our onions. Ooh, carefully. We're kind of going to throw them all over the place apparently. Let's see how the dog likes onions. Probably not that well. They usually just discriminate against green things, but we'll see. All right, so we're going to get this back up to a boil and then start a 5-minute timer. Onions have boiled for 5 minutes, so we've pulled them out. We're going to stop our canner from its slow cooking, so it's gotten up to temperature and started heating up our glasses. You can see the steam coming out. Our glasses, our jars. So we are going to carefully pour the water inside the jars and back into the canner. So this will probably give me about 10 cups of water in here total, maybe 11. As long as you have at least 8, you're good. More than that is fine, but at least 8. All right, so we've got hot jars. We've got hot onions. So now we are going to fill our jars with 1 inch of headspace. So I'm not sure how many jars 3 pounds of onions will fill, but we shall see. Get in there. Yeah, I dropped one and it fell directly in another jar. Couldn't do that again if I tried, I'm sure. So once we have our jars pretty full of onions, what we're going to do is ladle some of the water in there too. And then we're going to get all the air bubbles out that we can. All right, we've got our jars filled. So about 3 pounds did 4 jars. And now we're going to just fill with water to 1 inch of headspace on each jar with our handy dandy funnel. And then we're going to get all the air bubbles out of each of them and make sure that we've got just about that 1 inch of headspace. Next, we are going to stab around, especially around the edges, make sure we've got all of our air bubbles out, and then kind of remeasure for that 1 inch headspace. So every time you stab down, things kind of fall a little bit better into place. You make more space, you get those air bubbles out, and the level always goes down. So it's almost always going to need more water, more food, more whatever the case may be. This is all the onions I have. So the only thing I can get is more water. That's all I've got left to give. All right, and remeasure these back to that 1 inch headspace. So the next step is to wipe down the rims of our jars. So we're using distilled white vinegar. And we just want to make sure that there's no dust, debris, onion juice, anything coming between our jars and their lids. That will help to ensure we've got a nice clean seal and a successful batch. All right. And then we're going to finger tighten these. These are hot. So be careful. Use an oven mitt. I'm not smart enough to do that, apparently. And then we're going to carefully load our canner. So hot jars, hot liquid, hot onions going into a hot canner. Make sure always that you have your trivet in the bottom of your canner, that little metal rack thingy. All right. So we're going to plug our canner back in, leave it on exhaust, and then set the timer, put it on high and set the timer for 40 minutes. And that time is 40 minutes and start. That time is 40 minutes whether you're using pints or quarts, which is really weird, but I don't make the rules, so whatever. 40 minutes. And once it's up to the right temperature and the right pressure, or the right temperature, it's going to start like a 10-minute countdown timer and start beeping at you. That's when you're going to come back and switch this from exhaust to airtight. So we'll see you then. Our countdown's down to 1, so we are going to flip this to airtight. And then once it builds up the right amount of pressure, our countdown starts. And we have 40 minutes at that point, down to 0. Better have flipped it by now, right? So once it gets to the right pressure, it'll start our 40-minute countdown. See you then. Our timer is up, so we are going to unplug our canner and leave it for at least an hour, and then we can open it up and take our jars out. We are going to sleep. As usual, why is all my canning at night? But we will check it in the morning and see if our jars processed and sealed properly. See you then. All right, we are going to check our cans. So they've been in here overnight. And pour the water off the top. All nice and sealed. All nice and sealed. All righty. We have 100% success. We're going to take the rings off, label them. I also like to wipe down the rims before I label them and store them, because a lot of times things will kind of eke out before, well, not a lot of times, but sometimes things will leak out before they seal. So I want to make sure there's nothing in there that's going to like pull in bacteria or bugs or anything like that before I store them. But that's it. We've got our canned onions ready to use.